All right, people are still coming in also to the stream, so we are going to get started in just a moment. You will, of course, need your notebooks out. And if you want to get ahead of the game, you can make a list in your notebook, a numbered list from 1 to 40, number each line. And then once you're done, do that again 2 more times. You make 3 lists from 1 to 40. Yeah, that'll be fine. I also forgot my pile of notebooks. All right, it's 9:05. Let's do it. Today, we are going to be talking about description in a slightly different way than we did before. And so I figured I should bring in a poem about an image. So this is from Tracy K. Smith's book, Life on Mars, which I've read from a couple times before. This is the poet, if you'll remember, whose dad worked on the Hubble telescope. And this poem is about, in a way, the Hubble Deep Field image, which you've probably seen before. It's in 2 parts, and it's called "My God, It's Full of Stars," which is a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Great film if you haven't seen it. All right, here we go. Part 1. My God, it's full of stars. Perhaps the great error is believing that we're alone, that the others have come and gone, a momentary blip, when all along space might be chock full of traffic, bursting at the seams with energy we neither feel nor see, flush against us, living, dying, deciding, setting solid feet down on planets everywhere, bowing to the great stars that command, pitching stones at whatever are their moons. They live wondering if they are the only ones, knowing only the wish to know, and the great black distance we flicker in. Maybe the dead know, their eyes widening at last, seeing the high beams of a million galaxies flick on at twilight, hearing the engines flare, the horns not letting up, the frenzy of being. I want it to be 1 notch below bedlam, like a radio without a dial, wide open so everything floods in at once, and sealed tight so nothing escapes, not even time, which should curl in on itself and loop around like smoke, so that I might be sitting now beside my father as he raises a lit match to the bowl of his pipe for the first time in the winter of 1959. So that's part 1. And this is part 2. When my father worked on the Hubble telescope, he said they operated like surgeons, scrubbed and sheathed in papery green, the room a cold, clean, and bright white. He'd read Larry Niven at home and drink scotch on the rocks, his eyes exhausted and pink. Those were the Reagan years when we lived with our finger on the button and struggled to view our enemies as children. My father spent whole seasons bowing before the oracle eye, hungry for what it would find. His face lit up whenever anyone asked, and his arms would rise as if he were weightless, perfectly at ease in the never-ending night of space. On the ground, we tied postcards to balloons for peace. Prince Charles married Lady Di. Rock Hudson died. We learned new words for things. The decade changed. The first few pictures came back blurred, and I felt ashamed for all the cheerful engineers, my father and his tribe. The second time, the optics jibed. We saw to the edge of all there is, so brutal and alive it seemed to comprehend us back. Obviously, I love this poem. And I love this poem. The reason I bring it in today specifically, I love this poem for a lot of reasons. But the reason I bring it in today is because it speaks directly to an image. And for today, that's kind of where I want to start from. Today, we're going to be doing something similar to the description exercises that we've done before, but we're going to come at the problem of description from a slightly different angle in an effort to challenge ourselves. Today, we're going to borrow from a principle that I learned from art classes and which I think really applies well to writing and that I never see in writing classes. And what I mean is that sometimes in writing, especially creative writing, or even creative writing, we fall into this trap where we think that everything we do like has to be expressive or good or like have a goal and then execute on it. And maybe it's because writing is so linear. Maybe it has something to do with the way society views language as a medium. Maybe it's the way society views writers. I don't know. But I think it's a really shitty notion, honestly. Like, it just weirds me out the way that like, when I sit down and I sketch some trees or something, I don't have the same editor voice in my mind. I'm just like, sketch some trees. No one cares if it's good. I'm practicing. But when I write, there's a different kind of pressure there. And I feel like that kind of exists within the way classes get structured in writing. Like you're not writing unless you're like creating an object for an assignment that has a directive, etc. So this is kind of what I want to fight against today, because I think it's the wrong way to think about writing. And I think it completely neglects the notion of good practice. So you already did your list. So the point kind of is like when you go to art school, for example, when you're in an art class, no one expects you to like express your truest self when you're just like in class doing assignments, right? No, they make you draw eggs. They make you draw crumpled up pieces of paper for hours, right? That's called practice. They test your patience. They test your technical skill. And there's no desired outcome other than the act of making itself. Like if somebody came in and they were like, you could never sell that drawing of an egg. That's a bad egg. You'd be like, you're an asshole. That's not the point, right? We don't get that same freedom in writing all the time. It's harder to accomplish sometimes in writing. So we're going to push on this notion a little bit today. So some of you might not find today fun. Some of you might generate an encounter with what I sometimes call the inner censor, the voice that tells you that you suck and your ideas need to be great right now, or they need to do something. They need to have like demonstrable value. And some of you might love this exercise. I'm super not sure. I find that when I do this exercise, sometimes it's great, sometimes I hate it. So could go either way. But so what I've done is I'm not going to make you describe an egg for hours. That sounds really hard. But what I have done is I've chosen a couple different still images, which I'm going to put up on the screen, and I'll put it in the chat for these guys. And in our notebooks, we're going to describe these images. And we're not just going to go off with a blank free page and describe till our heart's content stream of consciousness. We're not going to do that because that's not quite controlled enough, right? If you've got an egg sitting in front of you for 3 hours, you've really got to focus on that egg. And you can't just like draw a dragon, right? That would be outside of the parameters. So the list is a parameter. And what I mean by this is we're going to describe the image I put on the board. 40? I changed it to 40. We're going to describe it 40 times, which means that each time you will have to try to see the whole image as the sum of its parts. You can't zero in on details and build it up brick by brick like you've done before. And you can't go on tangents either, because once you've written one line, you've just got to do the next line and describe the thing again as a whole. So our moves need to be broad and summative. And this exercise is going to ask you to stay with the whole image again and again in order to try and find new ways to describe it. And we're going to do this for what hopefully feels like a little bit too long in order to stretch and maybe even strain our descriptive capabilities. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said that a mind once stretched never returns to its original dimensions, which is a quote I dig. And I think it behooves us, and I think this is exactly why it behooves us sometimes to engage in an exercise that might be a little bit frustrating. And I've tried to pick images that can be seen in more than one way, that are ready to be recast by metaphor, so that over time you might find new ways of seeing and describing them. So I'm hoping you kind of undergo some of these mental contortions as you try to figure out a new way to say it, a new way to say it, a new way to say it. And so over the course of this, you might find yourself reaching for metaphors that don't really make complete sense to you. You also might find yourself utilizing language that at first feels quite strange. These are fine. These are encouraged. There's also a good chance that you won't get through all 40 before time runs out. That's also fine. I think the list is intentionally large so that you don't just like get to the end of it and then wonder what to do next. Okay, I think that's my spiel. Kyle, Matt, thank you for putting your names in the chat. Let me drop the image to the chat, people. This is our first in honor of Tracy K. Smith and her dad. Boom. All right. What do you see here? 40 times, 10 minutes, go. About 2 minutes left. All right, finish the last one up. All right, here we go. Number 2. Wait, I have a bit. Okay, so that was 10 minutes. And I hope that at least once the image started taking on different shapes for you. And that you started to see these great connections that exist between similar bodies on different scales. And what I mean by that is, like, when I look at this picture for long enough, I start to see like channels and structures, and it starts to look like a net or a sponge. I get really hung up on these sort of parallelograms that have a similar shape to them here that kind of recede. Wait, I'm gonna put these up. So this parallelogram of the orange dots, right? Think. And then there's this smaller parallelogram here, right? Of no intentional shape, of course. But as I look at it, I start to notice weird shapes like this, and it starts to look like smoke or something. It takes on all these forms, which is why I picked this image first. So now we're going to do one significantly more abstract. Bada boom. 10 minutes. Do your thing. About 2 minutes left. All right, finish up. All right. Oh no! So sorry to the people in the chat. LOL. I sent them the same picture twice and only just noticed now. Connor, thank you for putting your name down. All right, people in the chat. Technically, no, you weren't supposed to do the same picture twice. That's my mistake. But luckily, you had the permutations. You missed out on a great painting, but we can talk about it later. This is the third image. It's actually the third image. And before I click it, actually, I'm pretty sure I had something. Okay. So this is the last one. It's a little bit less abstract. It's a little bit more intense. And I think I would call it a little more narrative. So let's see what we make of it. Pow. Oh, yeah. All right, go. About 2.5 minutes. All right, finish up. Huh. Always interesting to do these things twice. Okay. I really wanted to be able to talk about this, but we are pretty much at time. I'm going to let you go. Talk about this more on Wednesday when we build off of it. So I will see you then. I hope you have an excellent day.